The human body is complicated. Like, really complicated. People can spend their entire life studying it and still not know all there is to know. Research continues into mapping out rare genes, understanding biochemical processes, and making sense of genetic disorders. Whilst understanding everything is impossible for any one person, having a basic understanding of the major systems can aid us greatly in making sense of it all. This video will touch very briefly upon the 10 main systems the human body is broken down into. These are the skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, respiratory, lymphatic, nervous, endocrine, digestive, urinary, and reproductive systems. There is also an 11th system known as the Integumentary System. This encompasses the skin, the largest structure in the human body. This will not be covered here, instead focusing on the 10 systems contained by the Integumentary System. For much of this video, I'll be making liberal use of the Complete Anatomy software, a fantastic resource which should have a free trial available to anyone. Link will be in the description. When talking about these systems, it is important to remember that these are human-made systems to help us break everything down. As such, do not be surprised when you see the same organs or structures crop up in separate systems, as there is some level of crossover between them. Let us start with skeletons, spooker of nerves and dwellers of dungeons. An infant is born with around 300 bones, which will then fuse to become 206 to 213 bones in adult humans. This variation occurs due to some people having varying numbers of ribs, vertebrae, and digits. Still, if the question comes up on a pub quiz, 206 bones would be your best answer. The skeleton can be further broken down into the axial and appendicular skeletons. The axial skeleton is your core, so to speak, and encompasses the skull, the rib cage, and the vertebral canal. The average person is born with 33 vertebrae and 12 pairs of ribs. In anatomy, the point at which two bones attach to a joint is known as articulation. As such, we would say that the first 7 ribs, the true ribs, articulate with the sternum. Ribs 8, 9, and 10 are known as atypical or false ribs, as they join at the costal margin and not the sternum. Ribs 11 and 12 are floating ribs and only articulate with the vertebrae. The appendicular skeleton encompasses your limbs, as you might expect, and include the arms, hands, legs, and feet. Where it is easy to get tripped up is the point at which these two skeletal systems meet. Remember that the shoulder girdle and pelvic girdle are part of the appendicular skeleton and not the axial skeleton. The muscular system is all about flexing and is composed of specialized cells known as muscle fibers. The 3 main muscle groups are skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal muscles is what one typically thinks of when discussing muscles, and encompasses 30 to 40% of your total body mass. These muscles are attached to bones via tendons, and it's muscle contractions that are responsible for the vast majority of movement in your body. Smooth muscles can be found in the gastrointestinal tract, where they play a role in motility and nutrition collection. In the lungs, smooth muscles assist in opening and closing airways. Smooth muscles are widespread and serve a purpose in almost every organ in the body. Cardiac muscle is involved in the cardiovascular system. Also known as the circulatory system, it consists of the heart, blood vessels, and blood. The heart pumps blood from the left ventricle into the aorta, where it branches off into smaller arteries. These blood vessels have thick muscles, which keep pressure in the vessels high and is why the left side of the heart contains thicker muscle walls. Oxygenated blood is carried to capillaries, depositing oxygen and vital nutrients to muscles and organs. Deoxygenated blood is carried back via veins into the right atrium. This deoxygenated blood is then taken to the lungs via the pulmonary artery, with oxygenated blood coming back to the heart via the pulmonary vein. In this way, the circulatory system is a closed system or a loop. Remember that thanks to the pulmonary vessels, not all arteries carry oxygenated blood, and not all veins carry deoxygenated blood. The respiratory system is the network of organs and tissues that help you breathe. Ventilation is powered by your diaphragm. Although you rarely hear of the others, there are actually 5 diaphragms in the body, making this one the thoracic diaphragm. When the muscle contracts, the chest cavity enlarges, creating a vacuum. This pulls air into the nostrils and mouth, through the trachea and into the left and right bronchus. This further splits down into bronchioles and alveoli. A thin, single-cell membrane allows oxygen molecules to pass from the alveoli into capillaries. Here, oxygen is taken up by deoxygenated blood, who have a high affinity for the oxygen present. It binds to hemoglobin at one of the 4 binding sites before the whole blood vessel is carried by the pulmonary vein back into the cardiovascular system. At the other end, we have the lymphatic system. In both cases, red blood cells do not leave the cardiovascular system. They are pressed through capillaries in single file. The hemoglobin releases bound oxygen, which passes through the cell membrane. Oxygen and vital nutrients become part of the tissue fluid which permeates the spaces between cells, in osmotic contact with blood and lymph. This fluid is taken up via lymph capillaries. Harmful pathogens and cellular waste is filtered via the lymph nodes, before continuing to either the thoracic or the lymphatic duct. This lymph is deposited back into the cardiovascular system at the subclavian veins. Unlike blood, which is in a continuous loop, lymph fluid only flows in one direction. In addition to these vessels are the lymphatic organs. These comprise the bone marrow, thymus, spleen, adenoids, and tonsils. These are responsible for the production of white blood cells known as lymphocytes, which aid in the immune response. In order to power all of these systems, we need more than just oxygen. We need energy. For this task, we have the digestive system. The digestive system converts the foods we eat into their simplest forms: glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids. Digestion begins at the mouth, with the enzyme amylase secreted by salivary glands. This flows down the esophagus into the stomach, where food is further broken down by digestive acids. This food then moves into the small intestine at the duodenum. Here, secretions are released to help the breakdown. The gallbladder produces bile, which helps to break down fatty foods, whilst the pancreas creates pancreatic juices, which break down sugars, fats, and starches. This food then moves into the large intestines, where large reservoirs of microbes and bacteria reside, which further aids in digestion. This is known as the gut biome, and can differ between individuals. This is then absorbed into the bloodstream. All blood from the stomach and intestines are taken to the liver, which processes the blood, creating nutrients and converting drugs into non-toxic forms before being taken to muscles and organs. Any excess waste is expelled at the anus.
That is one big pile of shit.
To help control all of these processes, the body has 2 systems, the first of which is the nervous system. This can be further broken down into the central and peripheral nervous systems. The central nervous system makes up the brain and spinal cord. Found on the posterior roots of each spinal nerve are the dorsal root ganglia, nodule-like structures which contain soma, cell bodies. When we extend out from the spinal cord, we start referring to the peripheral nervous system, with nerves that extend throughout the body. This controls both the somatic and autonomous nervous system. The somatic nervous system communicates with sensory afferent organs to provide feedback, and the motor efferent system, which controls voluntary muscle movement. The autonomic nervous system provides a sympathetic arousing stimulus and a parasympathetic calming stimulus. This in turn controls things such as the constant beating of the heart and the release of hormones. The second is the endocrine system, a network of glands and organs found throughout the body. In the brain, we have the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. Moving down to the neck and thorax, we have the thyroid gland and thymus respectively. Moving further still to the abdomen, we have the pancreas, found dorsal to the stomach, and the adrenal glands, sitting on top, superiorly, the kidneys. Finally, we have the sex organs, the ovaries in females and testes in males. The hormones produced by these glands travel to various organs, glands, and tissues in the body and communicate with them. Once they have reached their particular organ or tissue, they bind to specific proteins on the surface of the cell. There are a plethora of hormones to talk about. For now, know that these hormones are responsible for communicating with the body over a slower and more long-term response than in the nervous system. The urinary system's function is to filter blood. The main artery brings blood with waste to the kidneys, whilst the main vein carries back cleaned blood. Conversion of food into energy in the digestive system creates these waste products. The kidneys serve to keep chemicals such as potassium and sodium in balance within the body, whilst eliminating liquid waste known as urea. This is carried down from the kidneys through both of the ureter into the bladder, where it is expelled through the urethra. In this way, the urinary system serves to eliminate waste from the body, regulate blood volume and blood pressure, control the levels of electrolytes and metabolites, and regulate blood pH. Finally, we have the reproductive systems. The reproductive system is a collection of organs and a network of hormone production that work together to create a new baby. Male reproductive systems include the testes, penis, epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory ducts, and the urethra. The female reproductive system consists of ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, cervix, vagina, and vulva. The female reproductive system in particular is complicated and uses positive and negative feedback loops to regulate hormones as part of the menstrual cycle. The key takeaway here is that these two systems work in tandem to create new life. When a mummy and a daddy love each other very much, conception occurs. A sperm cell fuses with an egg cell in the woman, creating an embryo which implants and grows in the uterus during pregnancy. After a gestation period of approximately 40 weeks, a new baby is born. This has been a very brief overview of the 10 main systems in the human body. These will all be covered in greater detail in separate videos. Thank you for watching.